good evening, and welcome to a short video that will introduce the new features of Cloud Extend Summer 13. So I have with me today Dr. Michael Rowley. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Clive.
And Michael's going to take us through these great new features. So I'm going to hand it over to Michael. Michael, take it away.
Thanks, Clive. Yes, I'm going to show each feature in turn. There's some really good things here. What I'll do is I'll just put up a title on it, on what it is, and then for each thing, when appropriate anyway, I'll go and show it what it actually looks like in Cloud Extend. So the first item is what we call guide execution records in Salesforce. The idea is, in the past with Cloud Extend, it was possible to find out what guides were running or had been run, but it could only be done by going to the detailed activity report that was here in the guide home, and that couldn't be customized and reordered, and there's a variety of things you couldn't really do with it. So what we have instead is we've added a couple of new reports that are dealing with a new kind of record, which is a guide to execution record. And from these reports, you can see, let's see, I'll go to like all guide executions, and this is just in my little demo org, so you'll see little test runs and whether or not it is running or ended in an error or completed. For things that are running, you can open it. Let me, I have no idea what some of these things are doing, but let me just pick one out and continue where it left off. You also get, in addition to the guide execution objects, there's actually guide objects. So if I go to my tabs, I can see there's a new kind of tab called guides. In fact, why don't I just add the guides to my tabs, my list of tabs that I use. So if I go to guides, this is not all of my guides, but it is the guides that I've deployed. And for each one, I can see what it applies to and whether it's been published. And if I go into it, I can see all of the executions of that guide. So that's another organization of it. And if I go into any one of these guide execution objects, I can see other things about it. I can see who started it, when it started, who ended it, because it could potentially be ended by somebody different from who started it. If there's an outcome associated with it, that will be here, its status. And then the final thing is there's this button that's really useful. It's the guide execution log. If you want more information than that, you can run it with the guide execution log on, and we've got the ability to turn on or off guide execution logging. If I go to here and go into a guide execution, then I get this guide execution log. We had a guide execution log in the previous release. These buttons at the top are also new. You can expand all to see the details of everything. You can refresh the data to see it as you continue to run it, or you can export it, and exporting is especially valuable when you're working with our excellent support so that we can see the guide execution log and give you help. In addition to these reports that we've got out of the box that show you all your guides and all your executions, you can create your own reports. Maybe you want to show these grouped or organized, or you can show my running guides, based on only those that you're currently running, and so that you can kind of see what you've currently got outstanding. One nice thing about this is you can also, because you can go into a running guide, if you start a guide on your phone, a mobile guide, normally you wouldn't see it in a desktop environment, but you can start it mobile and come here and open it from your list of running guides and continue it on your desktop if you want. So that is guide execution objects. There's a new guide property that determines which guides are seen when. So there was a way of doing this before, but it was a little bit tricky. Now we've got a much simpler approach. You've got in your guide definition, there's a new tab called Advanced. And on Advanced, we've got the Run As, which always has been there. It used to be on General. But now it's got a couple of new things. One of them is this guide execution logging. So if you don't want those guide execution objects to show up, then you can turn this off and you won't get logging on either the guide execution objects on Salesforce, and it also won't log the information in the detailed activity report. But then this is the more interesting one. This is show guide only when. This has to do with what we call the guide navigator that you can put on any screen. This list of guides, as you already know, shows you the guides that are appropriate for the page that you're on. And normally, if you don't say anything else, it's just all of the guides that have been published that are for this object type. But sometimes you would like to have it only be shown to a certain kind of user, or only when a lead is open or an opportunity is open, or something, the status or stage of an opportunity is a certain thing. In order to handle that, you can just put a little condition in here. Now, the condition, this is actually being evaluated on the Salesforce side with the Visualforce expression language. And so we leverage the Visualforce expression language, but we make it easy for you to know what data you can test by putting in a test for typical things are like the profile, the user role or user. If I did something like the profile, I might say only if the profile's name is equal to, I don't know, system administrator. And so this would cause it to only show up for people whose profile is system administrator. You can use any of the functions or operators from this language, and we show you a little links to get at the list of functions, or just to remind you, knowing whether to use equals or greater than or that sort of thing is also here. So that's, you publish that. If it's published and it does not meet the criteria, then it just doesn't show up. If it does, it does show up. It's as simple as that. Next thing is theme customization. We've changed our approach to how we deal with themes. So in the past, under the properties of the guide, you could choose the theme. But really, there was only two possibilities. There was the out-of-the-box theme for desktops, and then there was the out-of-the-box themes for mobile. And there was no way for you to customize those themes. So what we've changed is, since there's really only those two things anyway, we've changed so that on an individual guide basis, you can decide, I want this thing to run on a desktop or tablet or smartphone, where we put desktop and tablet together because they're typically what you want to see. You'd like to see all of the things from the desktop you'd like to be able to see on the tablet and vice versa. But smartphones, you'd like it to be completely different. So then what those themes look like is now customizable on Guide Home Settings. You go to Guide Home Settings, there's always been this Image tab. Now there's this Theme tab. And the Theme tab has a couple. You can choose the theme you're starting from, and our default theme is called Blu-ray. You can change that to Redmond or Vader or Blu-ray Large without doing anything special. If I change to something like Redmond, then I can also go to customize it. And the way we've done customization right now is it's just based on CSS. We show you the CSS and with some documentation, some comments about what it's affecting, like this is about affecting the button and the button font size. And so if I want to see what it would look like with a larger font size, it's 1.3 instead of 1, I just change it and hit preview, and now I see it with bigger buttons. So you can play with different values, and some of these themes have a lot of different customization points. In the future, we'd like to get it so that there's more of a drag and drop style to customizing the theme, but just the ability to play with it this way will really be valuable. And then if I said OK, which I don't feel like doing right now, but if I did, it would apply to all of my guides that are using the desktop theme. Or if I changed mobile, which is coming later, it'd be for all of the mobile ones. So that's the simple theme customization. One really valuable one that's very easy to explain is instead of having to go out to the guide home and hit publish, if you make a modification in the guide and you say, add something new here, add a new amount, okay, and now all I'd have to do is hit save, and here, why don't I do it? Save, and then publish, and it's done. It's a lot easier than flipping back and forth. So that publish button showing up there is really valuable. We now make it possible for the end step or milestone steps not to show a screen, and there's a number of situations where this is potentially valuable. So there's this new button that says don't show screen. So let's think about a couple of the reasons why you might do this. One of the main ones is that you would just like it to do this when done behavior. So you'd like, for example, what is this guy doing? It's scheduling a meeting. Imagine that scheduling of the meeting, after you schedule a meeting and say go, you don't want to show a little end screen that says, okay, you've scheduled a meeting now. You just want to jump to some object. So go to some other object, maybe go to the account, and don't show the screen. So now you get a more straightforward flow, which takes you from the last real work right to some other screen. There's another reason why you might want to use this, and that is, here, let me insert into the middle. I'll insert a milestone step. For milestone steps, you also don't have to show a screen. And this is useful, especially used in conjunction with don't allow the user to go back, having this turned off. So if I don't show a screen and I don't allow the user to go back, then this is simply a way to prevent rollbacks in the middle of a guide. So if I do that, as soon as I go down this path, I can't use the history anymore past this milestone that I've just created, and it doesn't show anything on your screen. And then you can do other combinations where this milestone might take you to some other object. This, for milestones, this one is saying refresh the current object, which is sometimes useful. So the combination of not showing a screen but refreshing is useful to just have a guide at some point in the middle of the guide, refresh the screen, and then go on to the next page. If I just say continue, it won't even refresh the guide. It'll just be this behavior of not allowing the user to go back. So there's lots of different combinations here. We got a couple new automated steps. Automated step to kick off an Informatica Cloud task. So if I go to my list of automated steps, I can see there's this new category called integration. Search LinkedIn, which we've always had, is now in that category. But we now have this run Informatica Cloud task. If you have both Cloud Extend and Informatica Cloud data integration, you can use this to kick off one of your data integration tasks. It can run any of the different task types, whether it's a data synchronization task or a validation task or anything. We also have a new part of Cloud Extend Setup, where in Cloud Extend Setup, if you have Informatica Cloud data integration, there's a place for your username and password here. That's how we know how to access it. If you don't have Informatica Cloud Data Integration, then you can just leave that blank. Next automated step we've got is one through iterating through the values of a multi-select pick list. We've always had an automated step called next object from list. So if you've got an object list, you can iterate through one at a time without using an embedded guide. You just create a list and work your way through it. We've done the same sort of thing for multi-select pick lists. So you can choose some multi-select pick list value. I don't know if these things are multi-select pick lists, but if you do, then you can work your way through looking at one value at a time and dealing with that value. There's a much simpler way to put fields on screen. Here's a screen. It's always been pretty easy to, let me put it at the end, to add fields on the screen this way. You can stick the birth date on and then hit return, department, email, but you can see they don't line up. And sometimes people like to get these things so they line up better. So the way to do that is to put a table on. And we've always had the ability to drop a table onto your screen. You get this little dialog box that asks you about the table. But we made it easier to stick the table on the screen. And now when you add fields onto that table, it will automatically line them up. You just stick your table, put your cell pretty much anywhere in the table, typically like the first column, and then start dropping in fields. You drop in one, the cursor's at the end. You drop in another. It fills in the next value. If you drop in another one, it will know that it needs to add another row to the table, and you can basically just get all your fields to line up very easily this way. So I can preview it. Now I've got nicely lined up fields. Much easier to work with. We've got the object queries. There's a variety of places where we use object queries when you're filling tables and when you're looking for iterating over lists of objects with subflows, and most people are familiar with those. If you are doing something with lists, this is a guide that I've constructed a list on this screen and put it into a field of type object list. I've got this thing called selected tasks. It's an object list that carries tasks. Now, when I have a field like that, and I'd like to create a query, like pulling from a list, I can add conditions that say, oh, find any task that's already one of the items in my list. This way you can kind of build up a list over time. You can first get the main list and then do another query that has to be a subset of the list you've already got. So I can do something like look for something where the recurrence activity ID is in my selected task list. And you can see what happens is it does this. It inserts the reference to the field with this special new syntax that says format that field in a way that it can be used in a SOQL query. That's what that little syntax means. And so it enables these use cases of manipulating lists and getting them smaller over time with subsequent SOQL queries. I showed you in that last guide that I had this selection of a bunch of activities that was already on a screen. And when I previewed it, it only showed the headings. If you're designing your screen that's going to have a table, you kind of like to know how much space it's going to take. We've changed it so that if you put in the number of rows, put in 10 rows here, then you'll be able to see at preview time the rows that it's going to take and the columns and whatnot. So it's easier to understand. Next thing is a fairly minor issue, which is if you've got a field of type currency, say amount, currency, you can hide the currency symbol. This is valuable in cases where the org that you've got has a currency associated with it, but the guide you've got is dealing in different currencies. We won't automatically stick a currency symbol on, and you will know based on the semantics of your own guide what currency you're dealing with. And then the last thing is the one thing I don't actually have a demo for. We've made a number of substantial changes to the engine that underlies Cloud Extend that greatly improves performance, especially for larger guides. You'll really see the improvement when you publish a larger guide, but you'll also see improvements on the start time of guides, especially the larger ones. So I think you'll really like these performance improvements. And that's it.
Great. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. My pleasure.